Hi guys, this is video number 54. It's dealing with the issue of planning work activities, and there are a number of stages that are necessary to begin adequately to plan for work activities. I'm going to show you on my little board here. Bring it around to me so that you can see what we're doing. The first thing we notice is that there are pre-tender, pre-contract, and then the contract planning itself. Now, before the tender's even made, there needs to be a number of things thought about. The first thing is feasibility. Is this a project that we can do with the resources that we've got, with the people that we've got? And do we have the capability in the current staff, the current operatives, to be able to carry out the task, to carry out the project adequately? And once the feasibility and the capability has been established that we can actually do this work, and we do actually have the ability in terms of staff and equipment and so on, we then do an estimate, and the estimate is presented. It's either going to be an estimate or it's going to be a quotation, but we're talking about the estimate at the pre-tender stage. And eventually that estimate is turned into a fixed price, and we're assuming that at that stage the fixed price is then accepted. The next question we've got to ask ourselves is pre-contract. Before we draw up the contract, we need to order the subcontractors. We need to find out who are the people that are going to subcontract to us. We need to work out the site layout and the site buildings that are going to be needed to do this. And we also need to work out what are the temporary services that we're going to be needing. We'll need to have possibly sewage. We're going to need to have electrical supply. We may need to have other services provided like telephone. And the next needs to be a work program worked out. And we'll talk about a work program in a minute. But part of the work program will be a list of all the main operations. And on that list of main operations, there will be the method statements. Now, the method statements are simply a very simple description of what the particular operation is. And that's going to be linked to the risk assessment. Method statement and risk assessments go together. The risk assessment is an assessment of the risks for every operation, and the method statement is a means of working that will automatically fulfill the requirements of the risk assessment. And then lastly, there will be the sourcing of suppliers and labor to enable us to carry out this work. This is before the contract is established. The last stage at this particular stage will be the contract planning, and this is something which we'll be dealing with at a later date. So the next question we've got to ask ourselves is what about the site layout? And I'm going to give you a simple drawing of what the site layout might be. And this is a very, very typical site layout and organization. We've got a field lane, and we've got green lane. This is the location of the project. We've got the welfare facilities, which are in the corner here, well out of the way of people coming in and out of the site. It's where the water is. It's where the sewage already is, so we can have toilets and we can have showers, and we can have places where people can go for quiet or for cleaning themselves up after the work. This area in the center is the main project, and you'll notice that all around it there is a secure border, a secure fence. Generally, most of the time it's boarding that's put all the way around the site. You can see how that the access is from Field Lane. And you'll also notice that there are some trees on the site, and they need to be very carefully avoided, and make sure we don't knock them down or accidentally cut them down. You'll also notice that we've got this main area here, which we call the general area. It's where all the traffic and all the people will move backwards and forwards from these temporary buildings to the actual project itself. You'll also notice that there's a small area there for a crane to be able to operate. So the crane can pick up goods from here or here and put it exactly where it's needed on the build. And then we have a number of temporary buildings. Typically there'll be a site office and a security office, which is generally right next to the entrance, so that you can keep a very close eye on things going in and out. Secondly, there will be storage. There will be storage for bricks, storage for timber, storage for locks and doors. There'll be storage for all of the valuable items of the site. Some of the storage may actually be part of the site office. And then there will be a place for aggregate to be stored, the actual stones and the items made for making the concrete or for making anything on the site to do with brickwork, masonry. There will also be a mortar area near here where the mortar will either be stored or where it will be made. Okay, and there'll be a general area in the center. There'll also be some parking here, which will either be temporarily for operatives to park their vans or vehicles. It will probably, in the end, not be the place where things are parked. So you can understand that this is a very simple and a very well thought out site layout, okay, for a building project. And it's very, very important that we understand where things are laid out. Access and traffic routes, that's also very, very important. It's important that lorries, cranes and all these things are able to come in and out of the site. It's important that all the facilities for people are there and that people are able to access safely where they're going to be and where they're going to wash or where they're going to have their dinner. All these things are very, very important. The handling of materials, the handling of precious items. It's amazing in a building how valuable some items are. So it's very, very important that a site has good security and that those things are kept secure. The amount of theft that takes place on sites is horrific. Whole bathrooms, all the fittings for locks can go missing, and some of them are very, very expensive indeed. Also, there will be on the site stationary plant. Stationary plant, it may be a facility for making your own mortar. So the ingredients are brought onto site and then the mortar's made on the spot. So this is what's called stationary plant. But there may also be other types of plant that need to come on and go as required. Now, the next thing that I've got up here is the program of works. And one of the most obvious ways of having a program of works is to have what's called a Gantt chart or a bar chart. Now you'll notice on this particular Gantt chart, we have a list down the left-hand side of all the different operations going to be involved on this site. Across the top, we've got week numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we can see that the project's likely to last for 14 weeks. So what we do then, we go to the very first thing and it says site preparation and setting out, and we think that that's likely to take half of the first week. Okay, the next thing then is excavation, concreting to foundations and drains, and that's likely to also be commenced in that first week, but that might take some time. And all of these operations are listed, and then the time is put in, a bar is put in to describe exactly how long it's expected that work will take. Now, not everything that you would want to see is able to be seen on a Gantt chart. You can't see every detail. What you do notice is that sometimes jobs are out of order. They're not always in exactly the right order. It's not always a perfect line coming down. But what you can do with a Gantt chart is you can look at the date and you can look at your watch and say, all right, we're in the 6th week. So in the 6th week, we should be working on this particular thing, brickwork up to eaves. So you can then look at the building and say, oh, right, we're way beyond that. We've actually got the roof starting to be constructed. So that means that on the overall project, we're ahead. Okay. So a Gantt chart like this is exceptionally useful, and it's exceptionally important for the site manager to be able to look ahead and see who is needed next, what plant is needed, what materials are needed on site, and how he's going to be able to plan to bring these things in. He also is able to figure out if he's late on a project. That's very important. Now, this is only just one way of being able to plan work activities against a time schedule. There is another way of doing this, and this is something I'm very, very interested in myself, and I've used it many times as a site manager, and that's the concept of critical path analysis. Now, this is a very typical example of a critical path. So each of these circles is a moment in time. It's a particular day, like day number 1 or day number 4 or day number 10. And the gap between each circle is a period of time. Here on the first one, it says 3. So that's 3 days gap between the two. And then there's a 4-day gap here, a 3-day gap, a 6-day gap here, but a 7-day gap here. Now, what you're going to begin to notice is that coming down to this one here, it depends on which route you're going to take to arrive at a time for this particular thing here. You'll also notice that there's a pink line which goes right round like that. Now that pink line is the critical path. Okay, that's the path that's important to keep a very careful eye on, because you'll notice here that on event number 18 or day number 18, you've got the earliest time that you can do that operation or get to this particular stage would be day 43. The very latest time that you could get to that before you would be late at the very end is 48. So therefore, it's very, very important that you look carefully at the critical path. The other path is important too, but the critical path is that one there. You'll notice this is not a critical path going across here, but it will eventually become a critical if this process is never done. So this, I managed a very large building site when I was quite young, and I had a plan not unlike this for every single house. Every house has, funnily enough, a very, very similar plan. Okay, and I had a whole reef of these in a book, and I could walk down the building site and I could just pick a house, open up to the plan for that house, and I could tell you what should have been done by that day. I could also tell you how many days that particular house was late or early in its development. So this is an exceptionally useful tool. It's called critical path analysis. It was originally invented to enable us to build very complex things. It was used, for example, on our nuclear submarines. Nuclear submarines are not very big. They're very small. They involve a tremendously large number of people to operate, to bring it all together. And this had to be invented to enable it to become able to be done, able to be conceived, and able to be thought out. Critical path analysis, that's what it's called. So that's the thing that we're talking about at the moment: planning work activities. And planning work activities is exceptionally important when planning building projects. Good. Well, we look forward to catching up with you on our next episode. Have a great day. Bye for now.